Hi everyone, and we're almost here. The Drowned City player card expansion is almost here in just about a few weeks, and we've actually come to just about the end of the preview season as well. So I'd like to share with you 6 of the cards that I'm the most excited about for this upcoming box. One for each class and one for the specialist cards as well. I'd like to talk about what I mean by the things that I'm most excited about, though, first. I did a video like this 1 year ago for the Feast of Hemlock Vale, and I kind of define things as the cards that are, getting me a little more interested to build a deck around them or throw them in and have a kind of play style that feels new and unique. And I have to admit that the cards that have been previewed so far for Drowned City haven't really gotten their hooks in me quite yet. A lot of them are kind of weird, and I need to think about them some more. But there's definitely a few that I'm going to share with you today that I have some cool ideas for and I think are just really interesting and playable. So I'd also like to look back at some of the cards from last year to see if I'm still excited about those. And I had 5 cards. You can look at that video. I'll link to it below. I think I hit on all of them except for Survival Instinct, which I haven't really played with yet. So it's kind of funny. I hope that the cards that I talk about in this video are ones that I'll play with soon. So let's get right into it with the first one, which is a Guardian card, Hunter's Mark level 1 event that is fast, attached to an enemy at your location, limit 1 per enemy. You get +1 combat while fighting the enemy. Then the reaction, which is optional, important in this case, when damage is dealt to the attached enemy, discard it, deal 1 additional damage to that enemy. Anyone can do that trigger. So to me, what's really cool about this is that it actually fits into a lot of different playstyles. The first thing I'm thinking about, of course, and I've talked so much about her, being the Guardian Investigator in this box, which is Marion Tavares, who really wants to play fast events. That way you can play another event from your hand, draw some more cards. It's a really nice effect. But this card also looks a lot like Vicious Blow. It's just an automatically successful Vicious Blow, right? Because you always do that additional damage and you get that +1 combat for several different fights. This is neat for the case in multiplayer, especially like 3 or 4, where you've got a boss that spawns and you just throw this on the boss and now everyone can pitch in a little bit. So you can think of this as being a good Carson card for that reason, because you don't need to be the one who's fighting. But I can't really imagine that it's bad in any investigator. I like having a pseudo vicious blow that's an event because now you can think about all of the ways in which this is better for some decks, like whenever you want to be playing events, and vicious blow is still very playable and good in other decks that care more about skills. So I like that part of the card pool. It's also a spell, which seems a little strange, right? For um, Guardian, you'd expect this maybe to be a spirit or something, but clearly the theme here is a spell. But if you're playing it in, oh, I don't know, Diana or Sister Mary or something, you get sort of the spell synergy also, which seems fine. We now know that this can also be in one version of Agatha's deck too. None of those investigators, maybe Sister Mary, really want to use combat, and maybe that part of the card gets lost a bit. But the dealing 1 additional damage is always going to be on, no matter what kind of attack you are dealing. So like a shriveling or something, still get the extra damage, even if you don't get the combat boost. So I still think it's pretty interesting in most decks. I like this a lot. All right, let's move on to Seeker. And this one literally came out today. So in the few hours that I've looked at it, I think this card is really interesting, maybe really, really good. Um, but first, I'll just say none of the other Seeker cards are really getting me right now. I've talked about Correlate Alt's contents before, and I think that card's really good, and I like that. But I didn't put it on the list because I've already talked about it. And when I do these lists, I try to be as, talk about different things as much as possible. And yeah, this is just like kind of brand new to me. So here's what it is. It's a insight spell event, another event, costs nothing, 1 XP though, which puts it in the Carson range, which I think makes sense. Each investigator reveals each non-weakness card in their hand with a cost matching the chosen option. Sorry, choose even or odd. In player order, each investigator may choose to either draw 1 card from their deck or play 1 card they revealed from their hand. So this is a unusual ability where you get to have other players play cards from their hand during not their turn. the card that I previewed, Short Rest, kind of as a baby version of this. This is like extremely powerful in a large team. So 3 or 4, you're spending one card, one action, and the whole team gets to, if you line things up correctly, right, gets to play an additional, get additional like 2 other actions, right, in 3 player, and 3 other actions in 4 player. I think this is a neat idea because, at least in the way that I play actions are really important. Yes, there's a draw one card option here if you don't actually reveal anything that's matching, or you don't want to play those things. But that's just so it doesn't whiff. I think if you are drawing cards from your deck with this card, it's, I'm not gonna say it's bad, but you don't want to do that. You're not playing this card to just get some extra draws. But comparing it to all kinds of other cards, people have talked about Ever Vigilant, that it's kind of a similar idea because you're playing Ever Vigilant 4, that is, playing multiple assets with that. This could be events too. Imagine if you kind of chained these, right? That's why they have to have in player order. You each do this. Um, yeah, I don't know. Like, I think this reads really strong to me because getting stuff out on the board, it doesn't have to be early. It could be in the middle of the game too, can really save you. Imagine that you're the seeker and you're not fighting, but someone else has a gun in their hand and they need to get it out. I'm not sure how much table talk you want with this card, because you could say before you play it that, do you have the even costed stuff right now? Let's all play the even costed stuff. I don't know. I haven't thought about that deeply. But it reminds me of You Owe Me One, which also kind of incurs the same problem with table talk. Like, should I play this card? Can I play the card out of your hand that makes sense right now? Or are you taking a wild stab in the dark? I just see just a lot of value, right? Events, assets, getting them all out at once across the team is very strong. In solo, clearly this does nothing. In 2 player, um, it's probably not good enough. And to me, it's a little weird that you get a card that scales up so much in the higher player counts. I know that there's like clue getting events and assets that kind of work the same way too, but this costs nothing, and it's in the class that can draw this pretty easily. So I'm excited to play with it because I want to see how it actually plays. I think it's very strong, but I'm not sure until I see it in practice. So I'm excited to see it and see what actually happens. It just doesn't feel very hard to me to like make this do a lot. Yeah, like even the even or odd choice doesn't seem like a big choice. Like you just uh, wait until people have enough cards in their hands and you play stuff. Like maybe you talk about it, maybe you don't, but I have no problem with in the middle of the game playing a bunch of cards, right? I usually play a lot of assets and events in my decks, but you often need to keep playing them throughout the whole course of the game, not just at the beginning to set up and then you're done. You are generally going to want to play other things later. Even is probably the correct choice in a lot of decks because this is even. You can do the Jeremiah Kirby thing where you have almost all of one cost, but we'll see how that actually works out with a whole table. But I think it encourages a little bit of collaborative deck building where you want this to hit even more. Sounds cool. All right, number 3, Rogue. I've got Where's the Party here, another event. These are all, I guess the first 2 were level 1. This is a level 0 card, also costing nothing here. And it looks like it's for Alessandra because she's there on the art, but it's a trick and it's improvised, so you can take it like Wilson and Rita. But it's a parlay. So search the encounter deck and discard pile, the whole thing, for a non-elite enemy and spawn it exhausted and engage with you. Draw cards equal to that enemy's combined damage and horror values. I like drawing cards. It's a card game. You want to draw cards. Yeah, so the base effect here, probably you will find something in the encounter deck or discard pile that has 1 and 1, right? So if that's all you need because you're trying to get an enemy for some other an enemy is here effects, then I think it's a reasonable add to an Alessandra deck. If you're trying to combo with like Trish, I can kind of see that too. Although there are other ways to do it, I think, in Trish. To me, I think this is really good for fishing out a certain enemy that is otherwise not engaged with you, like an aloof enemy. Maybe they've got a lot of damage and horror, then you can draw like 3 or 4 or more cards. And if it has victory points, even juicier. So if you're playing solo or two player, I think this card goes up in value because it's otherwise hard to find those enemies. In 3 or 4 player, probably you don't need it unless you really want the card draw. But um, level 0 means it's open to a lot of different other classes that need the card draw bad, and the cost of having an enemy that is engaged with you but exhausted for this round is not that big of a deal. Compare this with Kicking the Hornet's Nest, which came out a few years ago, and I think is still a very good card because it gets resources and a clue, but you have to solve that enemy that round. This one, you don't need to solve the enemy this round. It's already exhausted, right? And you can walk around with it. You can kill it next round. It doesn't really matter too much. Of course, again, if you're just doing the parlay thing, it helps kickstart that whole engine. So I think this was probably a card they designed for the last set, or maybe somewhere in playtesting, they're like, it'd be really cool to have an analog to kicking the hornet's nest, but more on the parlay stuff. This is, I think, a really cool effect. So like I said earlier, I really like when they print cards that make me think about other cards that already exist, but then think about how they're different and how I might choose one over the other. I didn't put it in this list, but I think Bum Rush is kind of neat too. It's like the reverse cheap shot, but different in all of the ways that being an evade is different than being a fight. So I'm excited to think about how that card works too. And maybe it's sort of basic to be excited about cards that are very similar to what we've already seen, but on the other hand, uh, I haven't been able to really think too hard and get too excited by the cards that are just really out there. Now, number 4 is Mystic. I actually like a lot of the Mystic cards. I could only choose one for my, self-imposed rule here, and it's this one. I have Ghatanothoa, and it to me reads like a totally new effect. So yeah, it's not like other things, but it's 2 cost, level 2, exceptional. So costs you 4 XP. You get +1 willpower. Play with the top card in the encounter deck revealed, 3 health to put onto it. Okay, I just think that one line, play with the top card of the encounter deck revealed, is really cool. I'm super intrigued by that idea. There's so many effects that care about, okay, draw the top card of the encounter deck for some effect, right? And, drawn to the flame, kind of the most basic one. And you say, I'm rolling the dice a bit. If it's something that's bad, then I guess I'll have to deal with it. But this just says, you already know what's coming. And how do you use that information? It's a little bit like Gloria's ability in general to look at the top X cards of the deck and rearrange things. But she needs other cards in play for that too. And I think this is not just a Gloria only card. I think it helps her decide whether or not to use her ability. I think especially with her new weakness, but I think the play patterns that are going to emerge during the previous investigator phase, knowing what that first card is going to be, is really neat. You can decide whether or not you're going to try to dig for a ward of protection because that top card is really bad. For Glory, of course, you get to choose the order of the Mythos phase beforehand, so you can decide, who draws that card in the first place. But this just seems like a lot of fun, and I like having more information about the game. Yeah, like it's good to have limited information because otherwise it's not much of a game. The chaos tokens, the counter deck, your player deck, all that shuffling matters, but this is just a small change that if you know what just the first card is, then how can you play around your turn to make use of that? You don't know what the next card is, but you will as soon as you draw that first Mythos card. So there even is a little bit of like, I draw the card. Do I use my War Protection on this one? Or knowing what the next one is, I'll save it for that one because I've got War Protection level 2 and I can cancel someone else's card. Yeah, that sounds like fun to me. I think that's just a play style I personally enjoy, and maybe it's something that you'll come to appreciate as well. I just had a lot of Mystic cards that were cool. Deliverance, that's the one that is level 3. That to me is kind of a Calvin card, but also a Gloria card. that I'm really excited to play with. Lost Arcana, I believe, is another one. It's kind of honorable mention. I think they really hit out of the park with the Mystic cards that we've seen so far. And I'm just like not as interested in the Seeker cards. The Rogue ones, I don't think we've seen that many of. They're kind of okay. But the Mystic ones, I kind of like. I kind of like. Okay, let's go to the last one, which is Survivor. And this one is going to be the Gift of Nodens. How could you not be excited about this card? A level 5 card. We don't usually see those in Survivor, and it's just pretty cheap. Takes up an arcane slot. When you commit cards with skill test you're performing, choose a Survivor skill card in your discard pile and discard one card from your hand. You kind of do a little swap. Commit the chosen card to this test. After the skill test resolves, place that skill card on the bottom of your deck once per round. Okay, I know there's a lot of like dirty things you can do here with recursion, right? And the looping that you can do to get the card from the bottom of your deck back in your hand again with something like Scroll Secrets, or even just like reshuffling your deck or something and digging some more. I'm not even excited about that. Like, I would be really sad if the community consensus sometime soon is like, that's what you do with this card. You are just meant to fish out the same, resourceful over and over again and just pull other things out of your discard pile. Like, that's okay, it's cool. It'll be fun a few times when you try that, but I think that it is going to be more interesting just simply to use your discard pile as another hand. I think that's the most. I mean, that's the coolest part about Yorick, really, is that you don't need to play assets from your hand anymore. You get them in the discard pile and you get them back. Skill cards are a little different since they're easier to play from your hand anyway. This is also a way to discard cards at will from your hand and then maybe get them into your discard pile for some other reasons. I think just simply using more of your deck, that is your discard pile in this case, to pull from things as you want sounds like fun, right? Yes, I'm okay with like recursion of the really good skills in Survivor. There aren't that many, right? Like brute force, sharp vision, those are really good. You don't really need to loop other things that have a lot of icons on them because they don't do anything other than that. I mean, I like doing that. That's strong, but it's not as good as the skill cards in other classes that actually do something. I mean, Unrelenting would be another good choice here for card draw, but I think I'm just excited to play with that ability to say, look, my hand is maybe very limited, especially if you're playing George Barnaby, and what I'm actually dealing with is just some of the cards in hand, and then everything in my discard pile. I have some sort of access to it. So I think George in general like encourages this type of play. There's other Survivor cards in this set, the set of the 3 different tools that evade, investigate, and fight, which are like kind of okay, but they do things in your hand as well, and then you can discard things and then get them back for various ways. I kind of wonder about the game having had resourceful printed a long time ago in Carcosa that they have leaned on the idea that you clearly must have this card. It's like the survivor card of the class, but there's other ways to recur things. And I feel like this is kind of a resourceful every turn. The problem is when resourceful itself is being used in the loop and you just then only use one card over and over again. I'll just repeat it. I think that's boring. Looping exactly the same card over and over again is not that much fun to me, but using your whole discard pile as a library of things you can pull from as being like whatever is the strongest thing you need right now, I think that sounds really cool. All right, rant over about that. Let's go on to our last card, which is a neutral card. Yes, these are specialist cards. They're still neutral. They're just specialist. And how could this not be the one, right? Memories of Another Life is a 5 XP, level 5 skill card, 2 icons on it. So, it's a very fancy, unexpected courage. Gets to be only in a couple different decks. I don't know all these off the top of my head, but, Dreamer is Luke, as well as Lucius, I think. Anyway, a lot of mystics get this because they're sorcerers, even a few artists. I guess Safina's there too. If this skill test is successful, you may remove it from the game to search your collection for any non-permanent level 0 card. Play that card at no cost. at the end of the game, it goes back to your collection. Okay, this is wild, right? This basically says bring your whole collection with you everywhere, all the binders, all the boxes of cards, and decide on what makes the most sense right now. Now, I know for some people this is analysis paralysis, and they might just bring a couple of things that make sense. A level 0 Leo DeLuca at no cost, no action costs, is really, really good. But similarly to um, the last card, I think that the game is more fun when you have a whole set of solutions to any particular problem that might pop up. And it's just, what's the problem today? You know what I should really be playing right now? It's cunning distraction. Um, Now, the doubles, right? Those don't cost anything, no extra actions incurred. So something like elaborate distraction, bank job, thorough inquiry, like these are nice cards, right? If you have them in your collection for playing at no cost. Why not just have them in your deck to begin with? Because maybe you can't play them, right? And filling that sort of what does my class not usually get that much of? Do I need a lot of money for my Mystic deck? That sounds like a lot of fun to me. I think I would have like a couple of ideas, a dynamite on hand or something, for whichever deck I'm playing, just to sort of make sure I'm not running into the same analysis paralysis problem I talked about. But yeah, I think that this opens up a lot of interesting ideas, and I hope that we don't all converge on like, okay, it's only this card or only a couple of cards, even if those seem like the most generically good ones. I would like to think that players are going to be a little more creative about this, as long as they don't take 30 minutes in the middle of their turn to say, I better look through every card that I have, right? Um, but I like the idea. Transfiguration, I didn't mention that earlier with the Mystic cards. I think that's also a really cool, exciting card. I'm not quite as excited about it as some people, just because it's hard to wrap my mind around, like, is this actually good, or is it something very specific that in mind that you have to have in order to play it? I think this card can run into the same trap, except for I think you can always figure out something that makes sense rather than have I've got this weird combo that only works if I transfigure myself into some other investigator, which is, it's cool. I'm glad that exists in the game. It's not really my playstyle, but I think this is something I would try, just to feel like I'm, maybe even a first run through a campaign where I'm like, I've got a silver bullet. I don't know what the silver bullet is, but it's going to be something. So I'm excited to think more about this one and try it out. And it just seems like a cool addition to the game itself. Okay, that's it. I hope that you have enjoyed the preview season. So far, there's, I think, just one more at the end of next week coming. That'd be two more cards, and then we'll be very close to getting the entire box, and I will for sure give you my thoughts on every card as best I can. For some first looks at them coming soon, and I'm gonna get to play with the cards. That's what I'm most excited about, building some decks and getting them into practice. So very, very soon. Until then, check out other stuff on my channel. Enjoy some of the playthroughs that I'm enjoying as well. And I'll see you again for a video real soon.